This is Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a home birth mum of 2 little boys, a doula in Melbourne supporting birth at home. I'm a mental health nurse and the co-creator of Home Birth Victoria. If you want to learn more about me, the podcast, or my work as a doula, check out www.birthingathome.apodcast. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This is another partner episode in the Partners Supporting Birth at Home series. Today, Cian, dad to 2 girls, shares his experience witnessing 2 very different births, a C-section and then a home birth after cesarean. As with all the partner episodes, be sure to share them. As we reflect in this episode, they're very powerful and play an important role in understanding, choosing and feeling comfortable with home birth. Enjoy. Welcome, Cian, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me on Saturday morning. I'm glad that I checked with you about the time difference because you're obviously in Queensland and I'm in Melbourne. And you're going to share your sort of partner story because your partner had a home birth after cesarean roughly 8 weeks ago. Is that right?
That's right. 8 weeks to the day.
Yeah, amazing. If I can get you to give a bit of backstory, obviously you're in Queensland, but about who you are, who's in your family, that kind of thing, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we're living up in far north Queensland, just up past Cairns. For my day-to-day job, I'm trained as a teacher, and I've been lucky enough to sort of step into a role in a bit more of a leadership role in the local school here. So working with sort of those early teens students. Family-wise, I've 8 weeks freshly now a dad of 2, girl dad. Absolutely stoked, and obviously it's a good opportunity to jump on here because we've had, I guess, both ends of the spectrum in terms of birthing. Our eldest being I guess medically intervened. Ended up being a Caesar, and then obviously little Maeve 8 weeks ago having a completely different experience with a eye-opening and just absolutely magnificent home birth.
Yeah, brilliant. What was your experience growing up around knowledge around birth? Did you know, did anybody talk to you about birth? What was what was that like?
It's funny. It's funny is that you mentioned that because I think in a lot when you talk to, or if even when you mention home birth or any of that, the first thing everyone goes to is probably that same grainy footage that everyone gets shown in grade 9 biology of the lady having a birth in a pool, and they don't really show it as an empowering sort of experience. It's more of almost like a shock factor. Let's show the kids just to scare them almost. And that's about all you really get shown in schools, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even me as a teacher, a lot of the sex ed stuff, I guess, that we work through is a lot of it's just get through the birth part. It's all focused on the preamble, the leading up to birth, and I guess that's probably there needs to be a big shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And so before Indigo, who will be 3 in April, before you sort of started on the journey with her, did you know about home birth? Was that ever a plan, or was it always going to be hospital, or?
No, so and I'll be completely honest, and my partner and I were talking about this this morning, is even before the journey with Maeve, even a lot of the stuff is you have that the perception of home birth is almost absolutely no medical anything to do with it, and it's it's a bad term to use, I guess, but it's almost like that the hippie sort of thing, and
yeah,
you know what I mean, and that's a not a good perception to have. And I guess it was always just, if you get pregnant, you're going to go through the hospital system is sort of what you learn as you're growing up and with the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sort of how it was with Indigo.
Yeah. And are you able to give us a bit of a summary of how you felt with you know, the birth of Indigo. It sounds like, you know, I don't know the backstory of Ellen having Indigo, but it sounds like it wasn't initially, you know, there was no sort of thought that it was going to turn into a Caesar.
Yeah, and I guess that's the big shame is that it's there was so much good about that entire pregnancy. Like even just how much Ellen the whole way through said that she was enjoying the pregnancy, just loved being pregnant, all those sorts of things. We didn't really have any dramas the whole way through. Even our experience with our MGP midwife, who even to this day is like now a close friend, really. Like anytime we're traveling south, we stop in with her and all those sorts of things. Unfortunately, just towards the end, you know, around 40 weeks, we had some reduced movements, and after that, they sort of said there was low variability, so they suggested induction. Being new parents to it all, and I'll be completely honest, my personality is a bit of a worrywart, to say the least. And so when you've got 5 or 6 different doctors that they're calling in the room and they're saying, we're probably going to suggest that you be induced. Looking back on it, there was probably some other things that we could have thought about, given that they said we need to induce, but not for 5 days or 4 days or whatever. We're going to book it in for the Monday. You know what I mean? So can't do it on the weekend. So, you know, looking back on that now, but that's all just an experience.
Totally.
Obviously, then you have the classic cascade of interventions. Once we started the induction, all those sorts of things happened, and then it went quite long. The pain for Ellen during labour, given it was a artificial labour, if that makes sense, like the artificial labour pains were insane. So it wasn't long before, you know, we had the spinal, and then things sort of went from there, and eventually that night we ended up having a cesarean.
Yeah, wow. And, you know, without getting too deep into it, I guess, you know, what was like, that must have been like very like scary, I imagine, like, you know, in the middle of the night being like, okay, well, this isn't working, now we've got to have a Caesar.
Yeah, exactly. And it was weird because with as soon as they sort of hit it with the label with the reduced variability, it would just meant the second that Ellen went in there for the induction, she had CTG monitoring from the get-go. And again, being a worrywart, I just sort of hyperfixated on that little monitor for about 12 hours, just keeping an eye on it. And then, you know, as everything sort of came to a head, you know, there was sorry if it's gory, but there was you know, blood in the catheter bag and that sort of stuff, and the heart rate was going all different sorts of colors on the machines, and that sort of led me to I guess asking for help in there, because we were sort of in this room where the midwives are sort of wandering in and out. It was sort of one of those situations where they were like, okay, well, that's actually not normal. We're going to have a emergency Caesar, but we're going to have to wait an hour for the doctor to get in. So there was this sort of hour limbo period where, I was sort of freaking out a little bit. Sort of a lot of reflecting sort of happened over the next 12 months after that.
Yeah, totally. So you didn't have a doula or anything like that, like any other extra support people in there apart from the hospital midwives?
Yeah, so we had, and obviously being with the MGP, we were very confident and comfortable with our midwife, but the time in which we got induced, they have like a split shift. So the midwife that we'd known for 15, 20 weeks, gotten comfortable with, she wasn't to start until midday.
Yeah,
so we had like this 5-hour limbo period where we had another midwife that we'd met once before that.
Yeah.
And so, and then the other birth spaces weren't available. So we're in a birth space that was also partial, I guess, equipment cupboard type of thing. So there's a lot of just tools and
That's so interesting. That's not the first time I've heard of that, you know, people being like, put into, like what they've felt like is, you know, like a storage room almost. Holy moly. And so no, like through that whole like process, was anybody sort of communicating with you and like letting you know what was actually happening, or were they talking mostly to Ellen, or?
Look, to be honest, and again, this is why I have so much respect for the midwife that we're now still friends with, is that there was a sense of safety, I guess, once she sort of stepped into the room, and she had a lot of things that she wanted to try for Ellen before going to any of that sort of pain relief medication. Like, let's try and get you up. Let's try getting on all fours. Let's try some hip squeezes. All those sorts of things that hadn't really been done before that. Unfortunately, I think what had happened was that she was so exhausted by that stage, because we got induced the night before. So she sort of did from about 7 p.m. the previous day all night, a little bit of labouring, I guess, because like the balloon catheter worked better than expected. Like, she was 4 or 5 centimeters dilated by the time they sort of got that out. And then, the breaking the waters artificially as well, and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think by the time the midwife we were comfortable with sort of stepped into the room, as much as she was doing everything in her power to have that physiological birth, unfortunately, I think it might have been too far along in terms of just how much pain Ellen had already endured.
Yeah. And so Indigo was born via cesarean, and in terms of, obviously massive respect to Ellen, but like in terms of your experience, like postpartum, being a witness or a bystander, I guess, to that whole thing, like, was that something that like sort of played on your mind in those months later, or how did you manage that?
Yeah, and I guess it kind of also ends up leading into the whole home birth story, is that I guess in those first couple months, like you're not really even thinking about it. You're thinking about your fresh little one and trying to get through those first few weeks of sleepless nights, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And having everyone around you also just saying, "Oh, it's happy and healthy." Like, that's the main thing. The classic. It doesn't really matter. It's happy and healthy. There was other things as well that some of the doctors said. It's like, "Oh, well, it's good thing is we can just go for a repeat cesarean next time. If you want another child, we can just book you in, and it'll be nice and quick next time." All those sorts of things.
Whoa.
So yeah, those are sort of the phrases being thrown around initially, but we didn't really have a chance to unpack a lot of it, because you are definitely in a little personal bubble where you're just enjoying the little one.
Yeah. And so when did prior to, or like, when all of this is happening, home birth isn't really like on the cards?
No, not at all.
No. And so at what point does the conversation start to be around, okay, if we're having another baby, or we are having another baby, are we, what route are we going to take? Are we going for a VBAC? Like, when does that change?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool way to look at it, actually. We were very fortunate. Again, our midwife that we had through our first, she actually dropped a book off. I think it's like is it home birth after cesarean, or birth after cesarean? She dropped that off, and then I guess the home birth journey sort of started there, and a lot of it wasn't even through saying we want another child. Let's look at how we're going to birth next time. It was actually sort of unpacking together what happened with the first.
Wow.
I guess,
Yeah.
and looking at how did it end up that way, because we had such a beautiful pregnancy, and just sort of that small bit of intervention. So looking at a lot of the data around interventions and what that leads to a lot of the time, and that was, I guess, probably 6 or 7 months after the first birth, and then we sort of started looking into it. And Ellen, I think, needed that just as much as myself, and probably maybe more so. They really wanted to unpack, because there's some times where I guess as the mum questioning it, and then obviously it's not her fault, and that's the biggest thing. But obviously, the way it ends up is sometimes you're questioning that, and so unpacking that together and looking at the data around all of it, and how it impacts a birth.
Yeah.
And just through doing that, I guess it led to, well, actually, if you want to have the best outcome, it's actually home birth. And Ellen was the one doing a lot of the deep diving with that, and really reading up on so much about birth and physiological birth. And so a lot of that already was in conversations at home. Like I'd come home from work and we'd strike up a conversation about some bit of new information she'd found out, and then just so many small things. So after a year, Indy was nearly 1. We went on a family holiday, caught up with the midwife from our first birth, and talking to her, turns out she had home births. And it's like,
Wow.
okay, well, there's more and more stuff coming out now. Like if, midwives themselves are having home births, it probably has a big story to tell there.
Yeah, something to hear about that. Yeah. Yeah, wow. And did you have like any initial like fears or hesitations or things that you had to work through? Like, were you initially like, oh my God, no, that, there's plenty of partners that have said that was their initial response prior to learning about it?
For sure. And look, I think Ellen knows me so well inside and out in terms of my worriness, that a lot of the conversation that she was starting with was like, well, here's the main fear that everyone talks about, especially if you try to tell hospitals that you're home birthing, or even the fact that you're going for a VBAC. And so a lot of that. And so we were just talking through that again, nearly 12 months before we even decided to have another child.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the worries or any possible fears were, I guess, already talked about super early on.
Cool.
And by the time it even came to it, it was kind of like, well, I don't even know why we'd bother having the conversation. This is what we're doing.
Yeah. Amazing. And so what was your experience of like the pregnancy journey under midwifery care or private midwifery care with Maeve?
Absolutely incredible. So there's only one up in this area. I actually checked with her this morning. So we're still close with her. So I made sure that she's happy for me to use her name. So we caught up with Tanya.
Cool.
And Ellen actually had met up with her early on, again, just in that journey exploring her first pregnancy and stuff, and had spoken to her about home birth and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And by the time it sort of came around, and we had fallen pregnant and we were looking at the home birth journey, it was just sort of, this is what's going on, and met up with her. And it was fantastic. Like, it's just such a different experience when you've got them at home, coming and doing those checkups. And I'm very fortunate in my my profession that even as a dad, you get some prenatal leave. So being able to take some, it's awesome. Like they do look after the dads. It is 5 hours, but most prenatal appointments usually only go for an hour. So that's 5 prenatal appointments across the time span. So if they're only fortnightly, it was awesome. So, being able to be in our own home when she first used the Doppler, or, having Indy there as well for a lot of those earlier appointments, and Indy being able to listen to the heartbeat and all those sorts of things is, really set the tone for the safety of the home, I guess, for the birth as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And were you able to also go along to like the MGP or the hospital antenatal appointments with Indy?
So when we were pregnant with Indy, it was actually pretty heavily COVID times.
Oh, it was still COVID.
A lot of those,
of course.
Yeah. So 2021, there was still a fair few restrictions and stuff with COVID. So a lot of it was, if we were doing those prenatal appointments, I was using my time a lot of the time for scans. Because with your first, you want to see every scan. And again, that's another thing we did so different. Hospitals telling you need to have X amount of scans, or you're not measuring correctly. Is it the fondle height's not correct? You need to come back. And that's another thing that, again, is a bit of fear.
Yeah.
So I actually burnt up a fair bit of my time with that. In some of the later meetings, our first midwife with Indy, we were able to meet at home, and so I took just some sick leave to meet with her. But again, being able to have huge amount of meetings at home with Tanya throughout the whole pregnancy was amazing.
Yeah. And in the lead up to, like, obviously, being present as a partner in a home birth is quite different to a hospital birth because you have a little bit more responsibility. Was there anything that you were like particularly worried about, or like was constantly on your mind, or anything like that?
Not in particular, to be honest, because what we sort of had, and again, I guess it's the positive side of social media, I guess, is the amount of stuff we were able to share with one another and what we actually did. I didn't realize it was a feature until we had a look, is you can save a collection just for between two people. So like,
Oh, cool.
instead of having a little bit of data sent to me, or like a reel that Ellen would send to me that I'd have to watch there and then, we just get it saved to the collection, and then at night we'd sit down together and you could look through the collection.
Like on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that you could do that. So you can. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that was possible. I knew you could save as like a collection for yourself, but I didn't even know you could share it with someone.
Yeah, you can set up a joint shared one.
Wow.
And obviously the algorithm being the way it is, my algorithm pretty quickly went pretty wild. My explore sort of changed from fishing, cricket to a lot of blurred, censored explore images.
Yeah.
But look, at the same time, it's part of the journey. You really, if you want to go for it, you got to dive into that world, I guess, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And so was the plan for Indy to be present at the birth of Maeve?
We had her exposed to it, I guess. We sort of spoke to her about it, but then we asked a few friends that had also in some circles that had also had home births, that had polarizing experiences with their little ones, and we sort of figured the main consistent message was having a chat to the little one themselves. Do you want to stay here and be there for it, or do you want to go to Nana and Poppy's? And the answer is always going to be Nana and Poppy's. I'm pretty sure she'd be there if she could at all times.
Yeah. Just jump families. That's cute. Cool. So it was just going to be yourself, Ellen, and then the midwives.
Yeah, the two midwives. Oh, and the birth photographer as well.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Amazing. Do you want to walk us a bit through like that labour birth experience with Maeve from like your perspective? Yeah,
for sure. And it's funny because like you hear all these, especially on a lot of these podcasts, they're always quite wild. But this one was probably as textbook as a physiological home birth can be. I guess the only strange thing was the way it sort of kicked off. I woke up to the lights and power going off at about 12 o'clock or 1 a.m. sort of thing.
Wow.
And I said to Ellen, oh, that's all right. Like, it'll come back on. I thought she was mainly worried because the aircon had gone off and our little one, Indy, that was co-sleeping, would wake up, and she was like, yeah, I just had a contraction. And it was sort of like, oh, that's kind of frightening. But exciting at the same time. They did stay 20 minutes apart. And so all I did was sort of just try to keep Ellen comfortable through that stage and try to get some sleep if they were going to stay 20 minutes apart, because everything sort of tells you if you make it sort of through the night and into the day, it might settle down in the day. But we were definitely ready. Since it had started at night, it could go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Then we both managed to get back to sleep. I woke up to neither Ellen or Indy in bed. Ellen was already up and came in and said, look, your mum's coming to get her. Contractions are sort of 10 minutes apart. And she said, that's all right. Your mum can come back and drop Indy off this afternoon because it's daytime. This is going to fizzle out. And then by about 10, so that was probably at 8 o'clock in the morning, we sort of just sat down on the couch, had some food, watched some just some Netflix, I guess. Just sort of, then it all sort of went to the next level. Got TENS machine, then the TENS wasn't enough. Let's get in the shower. And Ellen, again, trying to just she was like, no, it's going to fizzle out. It's okay. It's still 6 minutes. So I'm pretty sure it's quicker than that. Let's I am a maths teacher. I can count. I think it's a little bit quicker than 6 minutes. So we had a look at the classic purple line and sent a photo of that to Tanya.
Brilliant.
And it was met with yum on the way. And by the time Tanya sort of got here, I got the pool ready. So it was pretty hectic getting the pool ready with Ellen only having like 2 or 3 minute spaces between contractions. I'd have to run in, get the hose started, then go back to be this pressing board. Because the way Ellen did it in the shower just had her head just buried straight into my chest as a bit of a a leaning position,
Yeah.
just as some sort of comfort. And then, yeah, that was probably the only real touch and go bit, I guess, with just getting stuff set up. We had the pool blown up, but it was getting water, so we had this big hose running through the house, and the sticky tape popped off a couple of times, so there was water spraying the roof. And Ellen's like, "No, but you need to be here." And so, yeah.
Yeah.
But then
It's a
after
big
that, it
job.
was, right. Then after that, it was all systems go sort of thing. Like we moved from the shower. She wanted to be closer to the pool. So again, laboured a bit longer. Same thing, TENS, and a bit of shoulder squeezing, all that sort of stuff. Then Tanya actually noticed that Ellen was instinctively, I guess, bearing down. And she said, it's time to, Ellen just said, I'm getting in the pool. Like, basically, don't stop me. So she went to hop in the pool. I guess this is where my first tip for dads, turn the TENS machine off before you grab them to take it off your partner. You will be met with a nasty shock if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was good. And then, I think Ellen probably only laboured in the pool for half an hour before, about half an hour, including pushing. And then, Maeve was into the pool.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was absolutely incredible.
Goodness. Yeah,
like I said, textbook. There's no sort of crazy stories that you hear people where, baby's here before the midwife gets here or anything like that. It was cool. It was amazing.
Yeah, wow. And I did see like a little video that Ellen's posted of you in the pool with Ellen. Were you in the pool the whole time, or like most of the time, or just at the very end?
So the way it started was, I guess I was on. Sorry, I'm just pointing because it was in this room.
Yeah.
So I was sort of on one side of the pool, and Tanya was on the other side. And Tanya had to be there because, and Ellen won't mind me saying this, Tanya's hip squeezes were better. So there was a couple of times where Tanya was out getting some stuff, and I tried to do it, and Ellen said, "Not you, get Tanya." And so Tanya had to rush back in and do the hip squeezes. I was sort of just the pressure board, and then I guess in those last couple of pushes, it was just easier for everyone to be in the pool. So all three of us were in the pool. Tanya was in the pool for the hip squeezes. I was there doing shoulders, we had a bucket of ice water for the cool press on her forehead, on her neck, all those sorts of things. Also there just for the affirmations as well into Ellen's ear, because not that at any stage did she say that she couldn't do it, but sometimes it's also nice just to have all those reassuring thoughts going through your head.
Totally, yeah.
So, it was amazing.
Yeah, and do you remember, like, as, like, Maeve is, like, born, do you remember, like, was there any, like, particular, like, thoughts going through your mind, or, like, were you just overwhelmed by emotion, or what was that like for you?
I think, not in particular. I think and I think there's some footage there from when it first came out where I'm just sitting there just overjoyed, but also just telling Ellen that she did it. I guess that was the big thing, because she was saying, "Oh, we've done it." And I said, "No, you've done it. This is all you. This is 2 years in the making, essentially, that you've said you're going to do it, and you've done it." And it was just incredible.
Yeah, so amazing.
Just confidence from both of us from start to finish. I guess it threw out a lot of the process, nonetheless.
Yeah. And, how different it would have been, that initial, postpartum, like recovering from a Caesar and, all that's involved in that versus just being able to just, jump in your own bed, such a contrast.
We had a beautiful birth space set up as well. Like right next to the pool, we had basically a straight after birth bed. You'd almost call it like some nice big soft cushions and stuff. So again, there's some photos of Ellen just lying on that with Maeve and a nice big piece of mango, smashing a mango like straight afterwards. And it's just it's insane to look at the difference between the two. So by 3:30, 4 o'clock that arvo, my mum was dropping Indy back off, and she said, "Oh, well, I'll come back and get her when Ellen's having Bubby again." I said, "Oh, you're not going to have to because she's already here." And Ellen just coming out after freshly having a shower. It's so different. Like Mum didn't even think that she had been labouring. It was how different she looked. And then you think about the recovery process for post cesarean. and you wouldn't even dream of getting out of bed for 3 days, let alone having a shower, kicking around, having some snacks, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally. How has Indy adjusted to big sister role?
Oh, amazing. Yeah, she's absolutely crushed it. Was, I guess, not overbearing to start with. Like some kids either don't want to have a bar of them or they are absolutely obsessed with them from the get-go. She had like 2 weeks where, yep, this is cool, and now it's just insane. Like we'll be doing something as a family. Could be anything out there. Might be drawing with Indy or whatever, doing some painting and stuff like that. And she'll just say, "Well, I've got to go see Maeve. Hang on." She'll just walk over to Maeve, give her a cuddle, and then come back. It's, it's quite sweet.
Oh, that's so sweet. Just check in that she's still there. That my sister's still there. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, that's a fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you wish that you have heard from like other dads or partners in their experience, or something else that you want to say?
Yeah, I guess the big thing, I guess, if there's any other dads that are sort of wanting to know how to go about the entire journey or anything like that, I guess the first thing would be it's not that it's not your decision, but a lot of the time it's I guess that whole journey is it was Ellen's sort of decision, and it's not my job to try and convince her otherwise. It was my job to do the education, get on the train, sort of thing, you know what I mean? It's time to really dive in and do everything. If I wasn't confident or anything like that, really learn how to know every single part of that entire home birthing process, really delve into the world. So, and like there's so many things that I did as a part of that as well, like this podcast, the other partner episodes, and then I think just about every other person who's done it as well. I think everyone cites the Great Birth Rebellion, the episode 28, the how to be a good support person. That's an important one.
That is good episode.
Oh, it's great. But like the partner episodes that you do are absolutely phenomenal. And I think it's important as well to jump on and see so many different perspectives. But also doing those, I guess, in a time where you're in your own space so that you're not looking at it as a chore. So like I can still remember to this day listening to 3 or 4 back-to-back partner episodes while I just cruised down a creek having a fish. It was just silent down a rainforest creek, had 3 or 4 partner episodes going, just listening to all the different perspectives, came home with some notes with Ellen. I think that's the important bit to make sure it's part of your life, not an additional thing.
Yeah. And like that's the power of story sharing. And I think, it's really cool that you also identified that social media played a part, because like that is the reality of our lives now, that anything is like easily accessible, and like the algorithm is it can be unhelpful sometimes, but it can also like really be helpful in that story sharing, and also the videos and whatnot. But you've mentioned some really awesome resources there, especially Great Birth Rebellion. I also really like the Midwives Cauldron podcast. But I'll make sure to link all of that stuff, including the purple line. I feel like some partners that will listen will be like, what is the purple line? But I'll make sure I'll link something like about that in the description. But it's been great chatting to you. And thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time, even with 8-week-old Maeve.
Thank you.
Hopefully she's asleep. Or was it Indy that was going in the car? Who was needing to sleep?
Both of them. So Nanny and Poppy came and picked up Indigo, and Ellen's out driving Maeve to sleep, because newborns sometimes don't love falling to sleep for you. It's got to be on their terms, and at the moment the terms are sleep in the car, I guess.
Yeah. My 18 or 19-month-old Frankie, he went to sleep at like 11 p.m. last night. So, I feel that, and he's still 19 months. So, but it gets better. It's
absolutely.
a journey. Yeah, cool. All right, thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you.